And Australia's Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has paid his first official call on his New Zealand counterpart Bill English. Trade and economic ties, also the refugee question, were on the agenda in Queenstown. Well, the two countries have vowed to revive the Trans-Pacific Partnership despite the United States pulling out last month. And during talks with Mr Turnbull, Mr English restated his offer to take 150 refugees currently languishing in Australia's offshore detention centres. Well, Mr English is with me now in the Wellington studio. You can also watch this interview on Facebook. Good morning.
Good morning, Sue.
Let's firstly talk about the possibility of Scott Brown as ambassador, as you were hearing there in that previous interview. Would you welcome his appointment?
Look, we will welcome the appointment made by the US government. It's their decision about who represents them, and I think, as you can see, there'll be a range of opinions about any candidate, as there has been in the past.
OK, but what would be the main mission with the American ambassador? Is this to carve out a trade deal?
Well, it's been the main mission has been to get the relationship between the US and New Zealand moving forward, and that's over the last 15 years or so. We've had a series of ambassadors who've, under both governments in here in New Zealand, have done a good job of that, and that's why the relationship's in good shape, and we would certainly want an ambassador who understood that. OK,
but pulling out of the TPP means that that's now something that you're going to have to look at again. That's something that was on the agenda with Malcolm Turnbull over the weekend. New Zealand to take a lead in reviving the TPP, which is currently a dead duck, I guess.
Well, we want to work with Australia because we've got similar views, which are that it would work for us, it would work for the region in terms of trade, and actually we want an ongoing way of keeping the US strategic interest in the Asia Pacific because it's a stabilising influence. So we're keen to show some confidence now in working with others, trying to build a coalition of countries who want TPP 11. They take some time to work out how to reorientate their own discussions, because a lot of them joined with the interest of the US being part of it.
But is there a problem though with Japan, which is going for its own trade deal with the United States? If Japan's not in it, how much of a sticking point is it?
Well, that's just one of the many possibilities. So the Prime Minister there has taken quite a strong view about trade compared to previous Japanese Prime Ministers. So our view is he'll be looking for opportunities and solutions. This is one that we would like them to consider. As
for other things that you were talking about with Malcolm Turnbull, the 150 refugees there, were you surprised that he is essentially saying that that's not something that he would want to do, to take up your offer to have them come here?
Well, look, I think the position's been the same for a few years. That is, they welcome the offer, but they haven't taken it up. They seem to have their own reasons for that. We didn't discuss that in great depth. Their main focus has been on this deal with the US, which remains in place and is being activated. So the offer remains. It doesn't look likely to me that they'll take it up in a hurry.
OK. Why about the representations that I guess that you made to him over the New Zealanders that are detained on Christmas Island? Why were they not stronger representations for the citizens of this country?
Well, look, we represent the interests of our citizens, of course, as positively and assertively as we think is going to be effective. We've got these various processes going on with Australia regarding our citizens. So the people who are coming back, being sent back to New Zealand, essentially deported to New Zealand, as well as the rights of New Zealand citizens in Australia. And in each case, Malcolm Turnbull's taken a real interest in it. On the pathway to citizenship that opens up this year, there could be 70,000 Kiwis who can find their way to citizenship. And with respect to the returning people who've got criminal convictions, they've worked hard to make that a workable process. It's still, as I said to him, we disagree with the policy, but we do appreciate the way they've worked on the details to make it effective.
Specifically about those people who are at the moment being kept on Christmas Island indefinitely, you're saying you make these representations, but you don't think that they're going to be effective, that Australia effectively doesn't listen to you about how New Zealanders are locked up and the key essentially thrown away?
No, I don't agree they don't listen. but I think it's pretty obvious they don't always agree with what we say. What I would say is we've made progress based on goodwill. I mean, the Australian policy is their policy. They make it. It has strong political support in Australia. But we do have an Australian Prime Minister who has worked in steps to improve the situation.
Now, as for the fires, you're hearing there perhaps some of the coverage this morning about the Port Hills fires. Where, in your view, does the buck stop on the Port Hills fires and how it was that the crews were being pulled in and out, seemingly?
Well, look, there'll be time to go back and look at all the detail of that. I have some sympathy with the Mayor of Christchurch. They found themselves in an unprecedented situation for New Zealand, let alone for Christchurch. By and large, because of their experience, they're pretty capable with these decisions. But as Minister Brownlee has pointed out, maybe some of them could have been made better. Right now, though, the issue is a different issue, and that is hundreds of people who want to get back into their homes and trying to get a good communication about the ongoing danger. Just because people can't see the big flames doesn't mean that it's necessarily safe to go back.
Was it the right time for Minister Brownlee to raise some of the criticisms that he did last week?
Well, look, he's a minister who's pretty direct. You always know what Jerry thinks. So the issue's on the table, and it's one that's going to need to be dealt with, because the aim here is for people to have confidence in the system. And in civil defence, there's always a tension between centralised control and local knowledge, because the locals know what's going on, but it's easier to make decisions sitting in the middle.
But for the people in the thick of it, does that erode morale?
Well, look, I think it would if it was dysfunctional. There's bound to be some disagreements about decisions that were made under pressure. And we need to remember last Tuesday and Wednesday, things were very tense there with a very large, hot fire.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if you, at that stage, need someone like Jerry Brownlee making plain what he feels.
Well, he has, and we'll have time to consider whether the right set of decisions were made. But after each of these events, Christchurch earthquakes, Kaikoura earthquakes, these fires, we get the opportunity to do that. And by and large, our system has proven, even in this situation, to be effective at saving lives and saving property.
Just very briefly on the poll, the first one came out last night since you took over as Prime Minister. You must be pretty pleased with your debut, but I guess now is this that you spend the next few months courting Winston Peters and New Zealand First, and can you rule out Winston Peters for Deputy Prime Minister after September the 23rd?
We won't be spending the next few months courting Winston Peters. The job ahead is to meet the requirements New Zealanders have actually for winning an election. That's stable government and support for the stronger economy that is delivering them jobs and incomes. And they'll vote. Some of them will vote for Winston Peters. We'll deal with after the election. But we are focusing on the public of New Zealand, not Winston Peters.
So does that mean that he could be Deputy Prime Minister?
Well, look, the only thing we'd rule out is sharing the Prime Minister's job. And we're not going to get into a game over hypotheticals. The fact is, if we can aim to maintain the high levels of support we had in the last election, then Winston Peters wouldn't be part of the mix. But the point of all that is just stable government. And I think that the group of parties we have demonstrated that we can provide stable government.
Thank you very much for your time, Bill English, the Prime Minister in the Wellington studio.